Hi, everyone. Welcome to another interview for Athletes in Practice. My name is Marquez White. I'm a recent Princeton graduate and a pre-med student, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Hannah Diaz today, a former coxswain for the Princeton women's rowing team and a incoming MD student at Tufts School of Medicine. Hannah, thank you so much for doing this interview today.
Of course, happy to do it.
So Hannah, I kind of want to get right into it. I want to hear a little bit about your athletic background and kind of what it was like being on the Princeton women's rowing team.
Yeah, of course. So I started rowing my freshman year of high school because I got cut from the volleyball team and rowing was no cut. I quickly started coxing because of my height. You can't tell on the Zoom, but I'm short. And so I started coxing and I realized I could be pretty good at it. So then I started taking it more seriously, got recruited like basically the following year. Went to Princeton, loved it. I don't know what the audience is, but basically the coxswain in rowing sits in the back and just yells. So I don't actually do any rowing. Rowing at Princeton was amazing. Like wouldn't have gone anywhere else for it. And we ended up being pretty fast while I was there. So that was fun.
And now you said you guys were fast. You guys were really good. And in 2023, you guys were undefeated. And then Ivy championships, you won the Ivy League. And then bronze medal in the NCAA rowing championships. And then you yourself were a two-time All-American in your 4 years there, which is really impressive in its own regard. Three-time All-American. Oh my gosh, they must have not updated or something. So that even more impressive. That's awesome. So you have an amazing athletic resume, and now you're going to medical school this fall. What piqued your interest in medicine?
Yeah, so I'm like not one of those people who always knew they wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to be a teacher. And then I realized I did not have the patience for it and I would not be good at it. So I sort of pivoted and got interested in medicine because my parents are both in the law. And so everyone always was like, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. And I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. What's parallel to a lawyer? And it was like medicine. And then I just started looking into it and I was like, oh, like there's like a bunch of factors that align with what I want to do, such as like variability and continuing to learn your whole career and grad school and not desk work. Like there's a balance of desk work and clinical. And also I think an MD is very like not limiting. You can go into academia or research or clinical practice or health policy. There are like so many rooms you can be in with an MD. So that's the part of medicine that I'm like really excited about.
That's super cool. It seems like medicine is definitely like a place where you can go whatever path it takes you, and something you'll probably figure out in medical school and beyond that. So now you graduated from Princeton 2 years ago, and 2 years ago, and you're going to medical school this fall. So you took some time off in between, which seems like it's a really common thing that a lot of pre-meds are doing as of late, whether it be to bolster their resume, like pursue some passion something that they want to do. Do you mind me asking what you did between graduating and going to medical school?
Yeah, for sure. My taking gap time was definitely actually partially a factor because of the student athlete thing, just being able to do the application process while not rowing was huge. And then that way I could like take the MCAT over the summer before my senior year. So I actually applied right after senior year, got in last cycle while I was working at a startup in health and education in the Bay Area called the Primary School. Highly recommend. I was working at that startup, applied to med school, got in, and then I realized I didn't want to go yet, so I deferred. So this year I worked on the Harris campaign in Arizona. Because I majored in politics. So I'm a very atypical pre-med student, I feel like, but I worked on the Harris campaign, and then since then I'm just traveling and hanging out before I go off to Boston.
That's super cool. It sounds like you did a little bit of both, like a little bit of passion, a little bit of like working for the working. You called it primary education, was what it was called, healthcare and education
Yeah,
crossover.
it was like a startup school. They were trying to basically create a center that was like healthcare and education in a primary school. So like the doctor worked in the school.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And you said you might want to go down that path down the line. So that
Yeah.
seems like a great crossover there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I want to pivot the questions a little bit. As I kind of told you before the interview, Athletes in Practice is tailored towards student athletes. I want the platform to be a place where they can look for mentorship from doctors, med students, or any other healthcare professionals who are former student athletes, and kind of a place where they can share what skills that they learned from being a student athlete and that might apply to medicine. So I like to call this the practice to practice segment, where you kind of share what you were doing, at what skills you developed as a pre-med student athlete, and how that might translate over to practicing medicine. So first question, what challenges did you face being a pre-med student athlete, and what were some things you did to overcome those?
Yeah. So I think a really basic first answer is time. They're just so pressed for time as a student athlete in college. For every sport, so I don't want to minimize any sport, but rowing, you're in season for 2 of the 3 seasons in the school year, right? You're in season in the fall and then you're in season again in the spring. So that is like hard because it's like, when do you study? When do you get your clinical hours? When do you get your shadowing hours? When you're practicing that much. So I think that was a really big challenge, and I was lucky to be in a program and with a coach who understood that I was pre-med. There were a lot of coaches I talked to in the recruiting process. I'm sure, I don't know if you dealt with the same thing, but I would be like, I want to be pre-med. And they'd be like, nope, sorry, like not here. And then they'd tell me about post-bac programs. And I'd be like, okay, great. Not really what I'm looking at right now, but thank you so much. And so I was really lucky to have a coach who, when I talked to her during recruiting, I was like, hey, Lori, like, I want to be a doctor. And she was like, great. I love pre-meds. She was like, you guys are the most driven people. Like, I love you, whatever. So she was really helpful in that, and just like understood, like, hey, if it's after practice and there's like an additional meeting post practice, like I might have to run out because I'm volunteering at the hospital or something. I never missed practice, just clarifying, but like the extra things, the things where there's a little bit of wiggle room. And so that was like huge. And then also just jam packing my summers. I think that's just so critical.
Yeah.
And so I, worked as much as I could. I took the MCAT over the summer. I tried to get the most out of breaks as I could, doing shadowing at home, just finding the little gaps where I could.
So it sounds like you got really good at time management and just squeezing your schedule with any little bit of free time that you might have had between practice, and then even your breaks, you were busy.
Yep.
So that kind of leads me into the next question. As student athletes, we develop a lot of skills that the normal student might not develop. And you probably developed even more than the average student athlete, being a coxswain. Like leading a boat, always in a leadership position, basically like day in and day out at practice. Are there any skills that you think you developed that a student athlete could leverage to make them stand out on a medical school application?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest parts of coxing, and so this is very specific to coxing, is you have a lot of information that you're intaking at any given moment, right? You're the only one who sees the whole boat. You're the only one who sees the other boats around you. You have multiple screens in front of you with different data points. And then you have a coach like yelling at you, right? So there's like a lot coming in, and you're going to be the only voice that the rowers hear. So being able to distill that information, cut it down to what's critical, what's going to be helpful, and being able to communicate that quickly and efficiently is like a skill I think I got pretty good at by the end.
Yeah.
So being able to do that in medical school applications, obviously there's so much that makes you a good applicant and so much that makes you, but being able to figure out what is the most important to you and also the most important to the med school, and being able to communicate that through your application and through your interviews.
Wow. I feel like that would also translate over to being a great physician one day. Like you're the voice that all of this medical team is going to listen to, and like you're taking in all this information. So that sounds like it'll be a great translation over when you're a doctor one day.
Like 10 years.
Yeah, down the line.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, those are all the questions I have. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me today. I wish you the best luck as you get ready for medical school this fall.
Of course. Thank you so much.